Hi there, welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight we're standing on a creaking dock in Port Royal, Jamaica, circa 1717. The humid Caribbean air clings to your skin like wet canvas while you watch a weathered brigantine drop anchor in the harbour. Her black flag ripples in the evening breeze, not the skull and crossbones you might expect, but a blood-red hourglass warning that time's running out for any merchant vessel in these waters. You're about to step aboard as her newest recruit. Though let's be honest, you probably won't survive your first year at sea. What with the diseases, battles, and your future crewmates' questionable hygiene habits. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Drop your location and local time in the comments below. Now, close your eyes and listen. You're standing among a crowd of desperate men outside a ramshackle tavern, the Faithful Bride, where recruiting happens after dark. Your pockets are empty. You've been unemployed since the War of Spanish Succession ended 4 years ago, throwing thousands of trained sailors into poverty. The recruiter, a one-eyed quartermaster named Dutch Willem, spots you immediately, former Navy. He guesses correctly, noting your tar-stained hands and the way you unconsciously sway with the dock's movement. The mainstream history books tell you that most pirates were violent criminals from birth, but that's Hollywood nonsense. Historians have documented that over 75% of Caribbean pirates between 1716 and 1726 were experienced mariners who'd served in naval or merchant fleets. You're typical of the breed, skilled, unemployed, and tired of watching wealthy merchants prosper while you starve. Dutch Willem buys you a tankard of Kill Devil rum and explains the terms. Unlike the Navy, where you earned miserable wages and faced the cat o' nine tails for minor infractions, pirate crews operate as floating democracies. Every man gets an equal vote in major decisions and an equal share of plunder, minus special portions for skilled positions. The captain only commands during battle. Otherwise, he's just another voter who can be deposed by majority rule. It sounds too good to be true, and you're right to be skeptical. There's definitely a catch. Here's something the history books rarely mention. Many pirate recruits were literally kidnapped. Historians still argue whether the famous join or die ultimatum was pure intimidation, or sometimes a theatrical performance designed to give pressed men an excuse for their families. You're lucky, you're volunteering. Though lucky might be generous considering what's ahead. When merchant sailors were captured, pirates often staged elaborate forced recruitment ceremonies, complete with death threats and mock executions, allowing the sailors to later claim they had no choice if caught by authorities. Dutch Willem slides a leather document across the sticky table, the ship's articles. You squint at the closely written rules in the candlelight. No women aboard, no gambling, no fighting below decks, lights out by 8 bells, equal shares for all, with bonuses for the carpenter, surgeon, and musicians, compensation rates for injuries, 600 pieces of 8 for a lost right arm, 500 for the left, 100 for an eye. The morbid specificity makes your stomach turn, but you sign with an X anyway. You can't actually read beyond recognizing common words, and neither can most of your future shipmates. The quartermaster grins, revealing 3 gold teeth, probably yanked from some Spanish merchant's mouth. Tomorrow at dawn, you'll row out to the ship, renamed the Siren's Revenge after her recent capture from the French. Tonight, you'll sleep on the dock, using coiled rope as a pillow, listening to the harbour's cacophony of multiple languages, clinking bottles, and off-key singing. A mangy dog investigates your boots, probably hoping you're drunk enough to share your last strip of dried beef. You're not. As you drift between sleep and wakefulness, you overhear two veterans discussing their last voyage. They raided 17 vessels off the Carolinas, but only 3 yielded decent plunder. The others carried bulky commodities, tobacco, sugar, indigo, impossible to fence quickly. Real pirate wealth came from capturing medicine chests, navigational instruments, fine cloth, and of course, coins and precious metals. One mentions they accidentally captured a ship carrying nothing but 300 wheels of cheese and 50 barrels of flour. The crew ate like kings for a month. Then half of them got scurvy anyway, because man cannot live on cheese alone, despite what your shipmates will claim. The strange truth is that you're joining during piracy's golden age, though it'll last barely a decade. Right now, in 1717, there are perhaps 5,000 active pirates in the Caribbean, a number that seems huge until you realize the British Navy alone employs 45,000 sailors. You're joining a minority profession, albeit one that terrifies the Atlantic world's merchant class, far beyond its actual numbers. Your new brothers-in-arms control a few strategic choke points and raid with enough success to make maritime insurance rates skyrocket from London to Lisbon. A church bell tolls midnight somewhere in Port Royal's rebuilt downtown. The original sank into the harbour during the 1692 earthquake, which locals still whisper was God's judgment on the wickedest city in the New World. You pull your thin coat tighter and try to ignore the mosquitoes feasting on your neck. Tomorrow begins your new life among the Brotherhood of the Coast, where you'll either find fortune and freedom, or a short drop and a sudden stop at Execution Dock. For now, though, you just need to survive until morning without getting robbed, stabbed, or pressed into the Navy by a roving patrol. The sun hasn't yet cracked the horizon when Dutch Willem's boot nudges your ribs. You stumble into a longboat with 11 other recruits, each looking as hungover and uncertain as you feel. The regular crew rows with practiced efficiency while you grip the gunwale, watching the Siren's revenge grow larger in the pre-dawn gloom. She's a 3-masted brigantine, maybe 120 feet long. Her hull painted black with a red stripe at the waterline, faster than a merchant vessel, more nimble than a warship, perfect for hit-and-run tactics in these island-dotted waters. You climb the rope ladder, hands already raw from yesterday's dock work, and tumble onto a deck crowded with nearly 200 men. The smell hits you like a physical force. Unwashed bodies, tar, rotting wood, and something else, freedom, perhaps, though it smells suspiciously like bilge water. The boatswain, a scarred Welshman everyone calls Chippy, herds your group to the mainmast where Captain Benjamin Hornigold himself waits. You've heard stories about Hornigold in every tavern from Charlestown to Havana. He's teaching a young protege named Edward Teach the Trade. You'll know him as Blackbeard within the year. What happens next would be unthinkable in the Royal Navy. Hornigold doesn't bark orders or demand salutes. Instead, the quartermaster calls for silence, and the captain begins explaining the ship's articles again, making sure every man understands. When he's finished, the entire crew votes on whether to accept the new recruit, so it's unanimous. You're desperate men with sailing experience, exactly what they need. Then comes the real shock. They're voting on next week's destination. 3 options are proposed. Raid the Windward Passage, hunt Spanish gold ships off Cuba, or sail north to the Carolinas where merchant traffic is thick, but naval patrols are increasing. The debate that follows sounds like a particularly rowdy Parliament session. If Parliament met on a pirate ship and everyone was slightly drunk. Men argue about wind patterns, naval movements, and which colonial governor is currently accepting bribes. You learn that pirates maintain an intelligence network rivaling any nation's, with informants in every major port selling information about ship departures, cargoes, and naval patrols. A grizzled gunner mentions his brother-in-law works in the customs house at Charleston, always good for advance notice of valuable shipments. Here's something your future history professors won't tell you. Pirate democracy was more egalitarian than any government of the age. Black crewmen vote alongside whites, former slaves beside freeborn men. The ship's surgeon is a freed African named Caesar, who learned medicine treating plantation workers. The master gunner is Irish, the sailing master Portuguese, and at least 30 languages are spoken aboard. Pirates create their own radical society, where skill matters more than birthplace. Though let's not romanticize it too much. Prejudices still exist, and some crews are decidedly less progressive than others. The vote concludes. Carolina Waters win by a margin of 12. Hornigold nods, accepting the crew's decision without complaint. In the Navy, questioning orders meant flogging or worse. Here, the captain just cost himself potential Spanish gold, and he takes it with grace. This is the pirate paradox. Violent criminals operating under surprisingly civilized rules, at least among themselves. You're assigned to the foremast crew under a boatswain's mate named Calico Tom, allegedly because he once stole an entire shipment of calico fabric and wore nothing but colourful prints for 6 months. He shows you to the forecastle, where you'll sling your hammock. The space is impossibly cramped, 6 feet of headroom if you're lucky. Hammocks strung so close you'll sleep practically on top of each other. The deck is sticky with tar, spilled rum, and substances you'd rather not identify. Rats scurry along the beams, bold as house cats. One missing half its tail perches nearby, eyeing your sea bag for edibles. That's Admiral Nelson, Calico Tom explains, ship's mascot. Feed him regular and he'll keep the other rats from your hammock. Cross him and you'll wake up with your toes nibbled. You're not sure if he's joking. Historians still argue whether pirate ships were filthier than naval vessels, or if that's propaganda. The truth is probably both. Standards varied wildly between crews and captains. Some pirate captains enforce cleanliness obsessively, while others let their ships deteriorate into floating pestilence. The ship's bell rings, calling all hands to witness punishment. Your blood chills. What could someone have done already? But instead of a flogging, you watch the crew vote to demote their current quartermaster for being drunk on watch. He accepts the judgment with a shrug and returns to common sailor status. Try that in the Royal Navy, and you'd be kissing the gunner's daughter. Naval slang for being bent over a cannon and flogged senseless. The crew immediately votes in a replacement, a methodical Dutchman who promises to keep accurate books and fair plunder division. As Siren's Revenge raises anchor and catches the morning breeze, you're struck by an odd realization. You've joined the most democratic institution in the Atlantic world, and it's run by criminals. Your vote counts as much as any officer's. You'll share equally in prizes, elect your leaders, and help decide your fate. Of course, that fate likely involves being shot, hanged, or drowning in a hurricane, but at least you'll have voted for it. The ship heels over as her sails fill, and you scramble to help trim the foretopsail, already learning that in this floating republic, everyone works or everyone starves. Calico Tom watches your clumsy efforts with amusement. 2 kinds of pirates, he says, steadying you as the ship rolls. Them that dies rich and them that dies poor, both still die, usually before 30, but at least the rich ones eat better. He pauses to spit tobacco juice into the scuppers. Course, there's the third kind, them that dies today from falling off the rigging. Try not to be that kind. With that cheerful advice, he sends you aloft to learn your new trade 40 feet above a rolling deck. Your hammock sways with each roll of the ship, and you've already learned the hard way to keep one hand gripped on the rope while sleeping. 3 weeks into your pirate career, you've been kicked, elbowed, and sneezed on by the men sleeping inches from your face. The forecastle reeks of feet, farts, and fear, though everyone pretends that last smell doesn't exist. You're bunked between a Portuguese sailor who mutters prayers in his sleep and a former slave from Barbados who's taught you 17 different knots and 6 ways to curse in Yoruba. The space would make a prison cell look spacious. The ceiling, the overhead, as Calico Tom keeps correcting you, barely clears 6 feet. And that's between the massive oak beams that you'll crack your skull on at least twice daily. Historians estimate the average pirate had about 14 square feet of personal space, and that includes your hammock, sea chest, and whatever vermin decide to call you home. You've already named the family of cockroaches living in your shoe. Water drips constantly through the deck seams above, despite the crew's endless caulking efforts. When storms hit, which happens with depressing regularity in these waters, the forecastle becomes a sloshing cave of misery. You learn to sleep in damp clothes because they'll never fully dry down here anyway. Smart pirates waterproof their hammocks with tar, creating cocoons that smell awful but keep you marginally drier. The truly clever ones steal oilcloth during raids for this exact purpose. Here's what the pirate movies never show you: the sheer logistics of 200 men living in a space designed for maybe half that number. The head, the ship's toilet, consists of a plank with holes cut in it, extending over the bow. You balance precariously while waves crash below, trying not to think about what happens if you slip. Privacy is a joke. You'll learn every man's bathroom schedule within a month, mostly so you can time your visits to avoid Big Pierre, whose dietary choices could clear the entire bow. The rats deserve their own mention. Admiral Nelson, that half-tailed survivor you met your first day, commands a navy of rodents that would impress any admiral. They nest in the ballast, breed in the cargo hold, and treat your hammock as a highway. Killing them is pointless. For every one you catch, 10 more appear. Smart sailors make peace with them, even train them. You've seen men teaching rats to fetch small objects for breadcrumbs, creating tiny furry accomplices for gambling and theft. Sleep becomes an art form you're still struggling to master. The watch system means half the crew is always working, so men climb in and out of hammocks at all hours. Your Portuguese neighbor snores like a rusty anchor chain. Someone's always coughing, probably consumption, though nobody mentions it. The ship never stops moving, creaking, groaning. You learn to distinguish normal sounds from dangerous ones. The regular working of the hull versus the sharp crack that means something's breaking. Historians still argue whether pirate ships were more democratic in sleeping arrangements than naval vessels. The answer is yes and no. Officers still get better quarters. The captain has an actual cabin. The quartermaster and sailing master share another. But unlike the Navy, where midshipmen might have private berths while common sailors pack like sardines, pirate officers often give up space for valuable crew members. Your ship's surgeon, Caesar, has a corner partitioned off with canvas where he keeps his instruments and medicines. The gunner sleeps near his powder magazine, which everyone appreciates since he's paranoid about fire safety. The most coveted sleeping spots go to men who've proven themselves in battle or possess crucial skills. The cooper who maintains your water barrels has a prime hammock location near a gun port with actual airflow. You're stuck in Stink Alley, the nickname for the forward section, where the bilge smell is strongest. Moving up requires earning respect through raids, seamanship, or surviving long enough that better spots open up when their occupants die. It's a morbid housing lottery. Personal possessions fit in your sea chest, a change of clothes if you're lucky, eating utensils, maybe a knife, and whatever treasures you've accumulated. Some men hoard practical items, needles, thread, extra buttons. Others collect talismans, carved whale's teeth, lucky coins, letters from sweethearts they'll never see again. Your chest becomes your entire world condensed into a wooden box. Theft happens but carries severe consequences. Or the pirate code is crystal clear. Steal from your brothers and face marooning. The truly disturbing aspect of pirate sleeping quarters isn't the cramped conditions or the smell. It's the democracy of disease. When sickness spreads, and it always does, the forecastle becomes a plague pit. You've already survived your first bout of the flux, spending 3 days racing to the head while your bowels turn to water. The man who slept 2 hammocks down didn't survive his. You helped sew him into his hammock with a cannonball at his feet, then watched him slip into the Caribbean's blue embrace. His possessions were auctioned to the crew, and a Welshman named Davies now swings where dead William used to snore. Veterans tell you it gets easier, that you'll eventually sleep through cannon fire and storm waves alike. They're lying, but you appreciate the gesture. What you do develop is a fatalistic acceptance. Yes, your quarters are basically a floating barn. Yes, you're sleeping in a cloud of 200 men's bodily functions, but you're free men choosing your own misery, not pressed sailors trapped in naval servitude. When the Portuguese finally stops praying and starts snoring, you close your eyes and try not to think about the cockroach investigating your ear. Tomorrow you'll reach the Carolina coast, where merchant ships await. Tonight, you just need to survive your hammock without falling out or getting robbed by Admiral Nelson's growing rat army. The bosun's whistle pierces through your skull at 4 bells in the morning watch, 6 o'clock to landlubbers like you once were. Your bare feet hit the deck that's already slick with dew and last night's spilled rum. No time for breakfast yet. The ship needs her morning maintenance, same as every cursed day since Noah built his ark. You grab a holy stone, a chunk of soft sandstone about the size of a Bible, which is probably why some clever sailor named it thus, and drop to your knees with 40 other bleary-eyed pirates to begin the daily ritual of scrubbing the deck. This isn't about cleanliness, though that's a nice side benefit. Wood rots fast in tropical waters, and salt crystallizes in every crack and crevice. Miss a few days of scrubbing and the deck turns into a splintery, slippery death trap. You learn to scrub in rhythm with your mates, moving backward across the planks, everyone muttering their preferred curses as their knees protest. The work would be meditative if your back didn't feel like someone's driving nails into your spine. After an hour of holystoning, you move to the truly miserable job, pumping the bilge. Every wooden ship leaks. It's not a design flaw, it's physics. The siren's revenge takes on maybe 2 feet of water daily in calm seas, more during storms. That water collects in the bilge, mixing with rat droppings, rotting food, and whatever else finds its way to the ship's lowest point. The smell could knock a buzzard off a dung wagon. You take your turn at the pump handles, working in teams of 4, muscles burning as you fight to keep the Atlantic Ocean outside where it belongs. The mainstream history books paint pirates as lazy criminals who did nothing but drink and pillage. Reality check. A sailing ship requires constant, back-breaking maintenance, or it literally falls apart beneath you. After bilge pumping comes picking oakum, unraveling old rope into fibers that'll be mixed with tar to caulk the endless leaks between planks. Your fingers are already raw from 3 weeks of this work, the tar permanently staining your hands black. Veterans' hands look like leather gloves, immune to splinters and rope burns. Here's something historians still argue about. Were pirate ships better maintained than merchant vessels? The answer varies wildly. Some pirate captains, especially former Navy men, run tight ships with rigid maintenance schedules. Others let their vessels deteriorate until they're barely seaworthy, planning to simply steal a better ship when the current one fails. Your Captain Hornigold falls somewhere in between. He insists on basic maintenance but doesn't flog men for minor infractions like a Navy captain would. The sun climbs higher, and finally, the cook rings the bell for breakfast. You queue up with your messmates, groups of 6 who eat together and share cooking duties when the main cook is too drunk or dead to function. Today's feast consists of burgoo, a grey porridge made from oatmeal, water, and whatever else Cookie decided to throw in the pot. You detect hints of salt pork, weevils from the flour, and something that might have been a vegetable in a previous life. It tastes like wallpaper paste, but it's hot and fills the empty space in your gut. Work continues relentlessly. You're assigned to the ratlines today, climbing the rope ladders to check every line, block, and tackle in the rigging. One frayed rope or seized pulley during a chase could mean the difference between rich prizes and dancing at the end of a Navy rope. You learn to work with one hand for the ship and one for yourself, never trusting your full weight to any single line. The deck looks terrifyingly small from 60 feet up, and you try not to think about Willem the Dutchman who fell from this exact spot last month. He bounced off the rail before hitting the water. The sharks got him before anyone could lower a boat. Between the major jobs come 1,000 minor tasks. Nets need mending. You use them for fishing and occasionally for boarding enemy ships. Canvas requires patching where wind and sun have weakened it. Cannons need cleaning and their carriages greasing. The ship's boys, kids as young as 10 who ran away to sea, scurry about carrying messages, fetching tools, and learning the trade that'll either make them pirates or corpses before they're old enough to properly grow a beard. You're tarring the standing rigging when Calico Tom decides to share his wisdom. 3 things kill pirates, he says, slapping black tar onto the shrouds: battle, disease, and boredom. The boredom's what gets most men. They grow careless, stop maintaining their gear, start fighting over nothing. That's why smart captains keep the crew busy. He pauses to scratch under his colourful headscarf. Course, stupid captains work men to death, which ain't much better. It's all about balance, see? The afternoon brings make-work projects. The bosun has you and 12 others shifting cannonballs from one shot locker to another, supposedly to adjust the ship's trim. You suspect he just wants to keep idle hands busy. Pirates, who've been at this life for years, have permanent grooves in their shoulders from carrying supplies. Your own shoulders are still adapting. Bruising purple, where the yoke sits during water barrel duty. As the sun starts its descent toward the horizon, you're sent below to help the cooper inspect water casks. This job matters more than combat training. A ship can survive without gunpowder, but not without fresh water. You find 2 barrels with loose staves, potentially catastrophic in a long voyage. The cooper, a meticulous Scotsman everyone calls Barrel Bob, shows you how to drive the hoops tight without splitting the wood. It's delicate work for hands more accustomed to rope and tar. The workday finally ends when darkness makes climbing the rigging suicidal rather than just dangerous. You collapse on deck with your messmates, sharing a pipe of tobacco, one of the few pleasures available that won't kill you immediately. The stars emerge in the tropical sky, and for a brief moment, you understand why men choose this life despite its miseries. Then someone mentions that tomorrow you'll be scraping barnacles off the hull, and the moment passes. You stumble to your hammock, asleep before your head hits the moldy canvas, dreaming of a life where your hands aren't permanently black with tar and your knees don't feel like broken glass. But that life led you here in the first place, so maybe the devil you know beats the devil you fled. Cookie rings the dinner bell with his usual enthusiasm, which is to say, none at all. He's a one-legged Frenchman who claims he cooked for the governor of Martinique before circumstances led him to piracy. Those circumstances probably involve poisoning someone important, judging by tonight's offering. You grab your wooden bowl and spoon, joining the queue of hungry pirates who've learned to eat whatever's ladled out without asking too many questions about its origins. Tonight's main course is salmagundi, the pirates' answer to, what do we do with all this random food before it spoils? Cookie has thrown together chunks of salt pork, turtle meat from yesterday's catch, pickled vegetables that have seen better decades, hard-boiled eggs from the chickens kept in the stern, and whatever else he found rolling around the galley. The whole mess is doused in oil and vinegar, creating a flavor profile that could generously be called complex and accurately be called punishment. Your messmate Rodriguez, the Portuguese who sleeps next to you, crosses himself before eating. For protection, he explains, not entirely joking. The youngest member of your mess, a 14-year-old runaway named Kit, pokes suspiciously at a grey chunk in his bowl. What do you think this was? He asks. Don't think, advises Big Pierre, spooning the mixture into his mouth with disturbing enthusiasm. Thinking about food is how you starve at sea. The staple of pirate cuisine isn't the exotic stews, it's ship's biscuit, also called hardtack, a cracker baked so hard it could deflect musket balls. You tap yours on the table, following tradition, and watch the weevils tumble out. The little white grubs are actually a good sign. If weevils can't survive in your biscuit, it's probably too far gone for human consumption. Some crews toast their hardtack over candle flames to kill the bugs. Your crew treats them as extra protein. Here's what landlubbers don't understand. Naval food preservation in 1717 is basically controlled rotting. Salt pork sits in barrels of brine that could strip paint. The beef, allegedly preserved the same way, has often turned a suspicious green color that Cookie insists is just the salt working. Vegetables are either pickled in vinegar strong enough to dissolve teeth or dried into leather strips that require soaking in precious fresh water to become marginally edible. Everything tastes like salt, vinegar, or decay, usually all three. Water presents its own challenges. After a few weeks in wooden casks, it develops a personality, thick, slimy, and tasting like the barrel it's stored in. Smart quartermasters add vinegar or rum to mask the flavor, creating grog that at least kills some of the bacteria while it's killing your taste buds. You learn to drink with your teeth clenched, filtering out the larger chunks. The aristocratic prisoners you sometimes capture always look horrified at their first sip. Within a week, they're gulping it down like everyone else. Fresh food is paradise when you can get it. Your ship carries a small pen of chickens for eggs and the occasional feast, plus a few pigs that serve as garbage disposals and emergency bacon. Fishing provides variety. The Caribbean teems with edible fish if you can catch them. Last week, the crew hooked a small shark, and Cookie turned it into a stew that actually tasted good. Or maybe you've been at sea too long to judge. Turtle is the real prize. These massive sea creatures provide hundreds of pounds of meat that stays fresh for days if kept alive on deck, flipped on their backs. The cook's galley is a cramped fire hazard tucked into the forecastle. A brick hearth holds an iron pot big enough to boil a small pirate, which has allegedly happened at least once, though every ship claims that story. Cookie rules this domain with absolute authority. Even the captain asks permission before entering. The galley fire is the only open flame allowed on ship besides the lanterns, and Cookie guards it like a dragon hoarding gold. One careless spark could turn your wooden world into a floating bonfire. Scurvy is the ghost haunting every meal. You know the signs: bleeding gums, loose teeth, old wounds reopening, a lethargy that makes climbing the rigging feel like scaling a mountain. Historians still argue whether pirates understood the connection between citrus and scurvy prevention. Some crews swear by sauerkraut, others by pickled vegetables, and your ship's surgeon insists on dosing everyone with a mysterious anti-scorbutic that tastes like boiled socks. The Royal Navy won't officially adopt lemon juice for another 50 years, but pirates are nothing if not practical. When you raid a Spanish merchantman carrying limes, the crew treats them like liquid gold. Mealtimes follow rigid democracy. Officers eat the same swill as common sailors, though the captain and quartermaster might have personal stores of delicacies purchased or plundered. When special treats appear, a wheel of cheese, a cask of wine, fresh bread taken from a prize, they're divided with mathematical precision. The quartermaster oversees distribution with the seriousness of a judge, ensuring every man gets his fair share. Steal another man's rations and face punishment ranging from lost shares to marooning. Alcohol flows more freely than water, which isn't saying much, but explains a lot about pirate decision-making. The standard ration is a gallon of beer daily, or a pint of rum when beer runs out, which happens frequently. Contrary to popular belief, this isn't pure debauchery. Alcohol keeps better than water in tropical heat and provides calories when food runs short. You've learned to pace yourself, watching newcomers drink their daily ration at breakfast and spend the rest of the day dangerously dehydrated. Pirates develop iron stomachs out of necessity. You've eaten barnacles scraped from the hull during desperate times, boiled leather when the food ran out completely, and something Cookie called dandy funk, crushed biscuit mixed with fat and molasses that tastes exactly as appetizing as it sounds. The human body adapts remarkably to sustained culinary torture. After a month at sea, you find yourself looking forward to meals you would have fed to pigs in your former life. Tonight's dinner concludes with a special treat, plum duff, a boiled pudding made with flour, suet, and dried fruit. It's traditionally a Sunday dish, but your crew seized a merchant ship yesterday, carrying a cargo of raisins, Cookie, in an unprecedented display of generosity, made enough for every man to have a full serving. As you savor the sweet, dense pudding, you understand why food features so prominently in pirate dreams, when your daily cuisine ranges from barely edible to actively trying to kill you. A simple pudding becomes a feast worthy of kings. You lick your bowl clean, already knowing tomorrow will bring more hardtack, more salt pork, and more creative ways to make rotting food palatable. Such is the pirate's burden, free men choosing to slowly poison themselves with every meal, but at least choosing it freely. The sun beats down mercilessly as you take your turn at the scuttlebutt. the water barrel lashed to the mainmast where men gather to drink and gossip. Your daily rum ration sits heavy in your wooden cup, a full pint of Kill Devil that would floor a landsman but barely takes the edge off another scorching Caribbean afternoon. The quartermaster measures each portion with religious precision, watering it down 3-to-1 to make grog. Men grumble about the dilution, but everyone knows pure rum in this heat would kill half the crew before sunset. You've learned the rhythm of shipboard drinking. Morning watch gets a half ration of beer with breakfast, small beer, they call it. Weak enough that you'd need a barrel to get properly drunk. The noon ration is rum. Always rum in these waters where beer spoils faster than you can drink it. Evening brings another beer ration if supplies hold. Rum if they don't. It sounds like paradise to a tavern drunk, but the reality is more complicated. Miss your ration because you're aloft in the rigging, and it's gone. No saving, no trading, no exceptions. The mathematics of alcohol storage would impress a university scholar. Your ship carries roughly 70,000 gallons of liquid for a 6-month cruise, and more than half is alcoholic. Water turns brackish, but rum improves with age, making it the logical choice for long voyages. Each man's gallon of beer per day means the hold groans with massive casks that serve double duty as ballast. When you capture a prize ship, the first thing crews check isn't the gold, it's the liquor stores. Historians still argue whether pirates were perpetually drunk or surprisingly functional. The truth, as you're learning, sits somewhere in between. Yes, men drink constantly, but it's measured drinking, controlled by iron discipline and the quartermaster's careful rationing. The romantic image of pirates swilling rum from bottles all day would result in a ship crewed by corpses within a week. Caribbean heat and physical labor create a thirst that water alone can't safely satisfy. Not when that water tastes like it's been filtered through a dead goat. Here's something the temperance crusaders won't tell you. Alcohol saves lives at sea. Your rum ration kills bacteria that contaminated water would spread through the crew like wildfire. Fermented drinks provide calories when food runs short. The slight buzz takes the edge off the grinding misery of shipboard life without rendering men unable to work. You've seen what happens when the alcohol runs out. Men forced to drink straight water sicken within days, their guts cramping from whatever microscopic horrors lurk in those wooden casks. The social aspect of drinking matters more than the alcohol itself. Your messmates share their grog ration in the dog watch, that blessed hour between work and sleep when men become human again instead of cogs in the ship's machinery. Stories flow with the rum, lies about past conquests, dreams of future riches, and occasionally, genuine memories of families left behind. Rodriguez admits he has a wife in Lisbon who thinks he's dead. Big Pierre claims he'll buy a sugar plantation when his pirating days end. Nobody mentions that pirates rarely live long enough to retire. Drinking customs develop their own democracy. When prizes yield wine or brandy, gentlemen's drinks too fine for daily rations, the crew votes on distribution. Usually it's sold at the next port. Profits divided among the company. But sometimes, after a particularly hard fight or during holiday celebrations, the quartermaster breaks out the good stuff. You've tasted Spanish wine exactly once during Christmas festivities, and the memory of something that didn't taste like paint thinner still haunts your dreams. The flip side of controlled drinking is the spectacular debauchery of shore leave. Pirates hitting port after months at sea drink like they're trying to consume their own body weight in alcohol. Tavern keepers in Nassau and Tortuga have a saying, "A pirate's money burns holes in his pockets and pickles his liver." You've watched shipmates blow 6 months of prize money in 3 days of legendary drinking. One memorable night in Nassau, your crew spent 800 pieces of 8 on rum alone, enough to buy a small ship. But here's the dark truth about pirate drinking. It's self-medication for a brutal life. Men drink to forget the friends they've watched die, the violence they've inflicted and endured, the constant spectre of death by disease, drowning, or the hangman's noose. Your shipmate Collins drinks to silence the screams of a merchant captain they tortured for information about hidden gold. The gunner's mate numbs phantom pain from his missing fingers. Everyone has their demons, and rum is cheaper than therapy, though equally ineffective in the long run. The surgeon, Caesar, maintains the ship's medical rum stores, doling out extra rations for men in pain or fighting infection. Having your wound cleaned with rum burns like the devil's own fire, but it's better than gangrene. Before amputations, men get drunk enough to pass out, the closest thing to anesthesia available. You've held down a screaming shipmate while Caesar sawed through bone, the victim's blood mixing with spilled rum on the surgery table. The memory makes your daily grog ration taste like ashes. Sobriety exists, barely. Some pirates swear off drink entirely, usually after watching alcohol kill someone they cared about. The ship's cooper, Barrel Bob, hasn't touched a drop in 5 years. Claims it keeps his hands steady for the delicate work of maintaining the vessels that hold everyone's liquid life. These teetotalers face mockery, but also grudging respect. In a world where drinking is both survival tool and social currency, choosing sobriety takes iron will. Your own relationship with rum has evolved from enthusiastic to practical. That first week, you drank every drop of your ration and begged for more. Now you understand the balance, enough to purify water and dull the edge of exhaustion. Not enough to impair your ability to scramble up rigging when the bosun calls. You've seen men killed by their own drunkenness, falling from the yards or picked off by sharpshooters because rum made them brave and stupid. The sea doesn't forgive sloppy drunks. As you finish your grog ration, watching the sun sink toward the horizon, you realize you're becoming what you once feared, a functional alcoholic sailing toward an early grave. But what's the alternative? Drink water and die of flux? Stay sober and let the full weight of this life crush your spirit? You raise your empty cup in a mock toast to the setting sun, then head below for the evening's watch. Tomorrow will bring another pint of rum, another day of controlled drinking in an uncontrolled life. At least you're choosing your poison, which is more than pressed Navy sailors can say. The rum may be killing you slowly, but freedom tastes better than sobriety ever could. The retching starts before dawn. Rodriguez curls into a ball in his hammock, skin burning with fever while his bowels turn to water. By noon, 6 more men have fallen ill, and the forecastle reeks of vomit and worse. Yellow Jack, some whisper, yellow fever, the disease that kills more pirates than all the world's navies combined. But Caesar, your African surgeon, shakes his head after examining the sick. Just the bloody flux, he announces, which isn't much comfort since dysentery can empty a ship just as efficiently as plague. You help carry the sickest men to the makeshift hospital in the forward hold, a hellish space where diseased pirates go to either recover or die. Lamplight flickers across fevered faces while Caesar moves between patients with his medicine chest, a collection of horrors that would make a medieval torturer proud. Mercury for syphilis, laudanum for pain, and something he calls Venice treacle, that supposedly cures everything but probably cures nothing. The smell of purging bodies mixes with medicinal herbs and the ever-present stench of bilge water. Here's what your recruitment officer didn't mention. Pirates die from disease 50 times more often than from combat. Scurvy turns your gums to bloody sponges. Malaria comes in waves, shaking men with fevered chills until their teeth crack. The pox spreads through crews faster than fire, leaving survivors scarred and sometimes blind. Typhus, carried by the lice that infest every man aboard, burns through packed quarters like divine judgment. You've already survived 2 outbreaks of ship fever, and consider yourself lucky to still have all your teeth. The surgeon's treatments range from useless to actively harmful. Caesar bleeds patients to release bad humors, weakening men who need every drop of strength. He doses them with calomel, mercurous chloride that causes uncontrollable salivation, while slowly poisoning the patient. For tropical fevers, he prescribes Peruvian bark, one of the few remedies that actually works, though nobody knows why. Historians still argue whether pirate medicine was worse than naval medicine. The answer is yes, but marginally. Everyone's medical knowledge in 1717 amounts to educated guessing with a side of accidental poisoning. You watch Caesar perform his morning rounds, mixing remedies with the confidence of a man who learned medicine through brutal experience rather than university lectures. He treats sword wounds with a poultice of rum and gunpowder. Broken bones get splintered with whatever's handy. Barrel staves work well. For the French disease, what you'd call syphilis, he prescribes mercury rubs that cause more suffering than the disease itself. Men joke darkly that Caesar's cures are designed to make death look attractive by comparison. The most dreaded sound on any ship is, "All hands, prepare for surgery." Yesterday, a topman named Williams fell from the main yard, shattering his left leg so badly that white bone jutted through torn flesh. Caesar made his assessment in seconds. Amputate or watch gangrene kill Williams within the week. They hauled him to the carpenter's bench, the closest thing to an operating table available. You were among those chosen to hold him down, a job that still haunts your dreams. Caesar works fast, knowing that shock kills as surely as blood loss. The bone saw sounds like it's cutting wood, which technically it is. Williams screamed until he passed out. A mercy, since Caesar had already used the last of the laudanum on another patient. The stump was sealed with hot tar from the galley, filling the air with the smell of burning flesh. Williams survived the night, which makes him luckier than most. The severed leg went over the side after someone remembered to remove his shoe. Waste not, want not. Disease spreads through the ship like gossip, and just as impossible to stop. Men sleep inches apart, share eating utensils, and breathe the same fetid air. When someone coughs, everyone gets sprayed. The head becomes a disease transmission center where sick men contaminate the very seats. You've learned to identify the early signs of various ailments. The yellowing eyes of liver disease, the telltale rash of typhus, the bloody cough of consumption. Knowledge doesn't prevent infection, but at least you know what's killing you. Tropical diseases are a special category of misery. Men who've never left Europe collapse within weeks of reaching the Caribbean, their bodies unprepared for mosquito-borne plagues. You've watched tough sailors reduced to shivering wrecks by malaria, begging for death between fever spikes. The local men aboard, especially former slaves from African colonies, seem more resistant. They still sicken, but survive at higher rates. Caesar theorizes that childhood exposure grants some protection, though he can't explain the mechanism. Venereal disease runs rampant through every pirate crew. Shore leave in ports like Nassau means brothels, and brothels mean the pox in all its variations. Or men joke about their French postcards and Spanish letters, slang for various intimate diseases, but the laughter stops when symptoms appear. You've seen proud pirates reduced to oozing wrecks, their manhood rotting away despite Caesar's mercury treatments. The lucky ones die quickly. The unlucky ones go mad from tertiary syphilis, raving about sea monsters before their shipmates quietly push them overboard. Prevention is a joke when you live in filth. Caesar insists on airing bedding when weather permits, but tropical rain makes this impossible for weeks at a time. He doses the crew with preventive physic that tastes like boiled boot leather and probably does nothing. Some men wear charms, dried herbs, religious medals, African fetishes, believing supernatural protection works better than medicine. Given Caesar's success rate, they might be right. The pharmacy aboard ship tells its own story of desperation. Opium for pain, though supplies run low quickly. Ipecacuanha, to induce vomiting, because sometimes purging is the only option. Blue vitriol for eye infections that blind men in days. Whale oil for everything from constipation to wound care. Every captured ship is plundered for medical supplies before gold. A fully stocked medicine chest is worth a fortune in any pirate port, more valuable than silk or spices. Mental illness gets no recognition beyond madness or melancholy. Men who crack under the strain face mockery at best, violence at worst. You've seen sailors go catatonic after brutal battles, staring at nothing while their messmates work around them. Others develop obsessions, counting constantly, washing hands raw in salt water, or becoming convinced that their shipmates are plotting against them. The standard treatment is to ignore it until they either recover or become too dangerous to keep aboard. As Rodriguez's fever finally breaks after 3 days of agony, you realize you've been holding your breath. Not from the smell, you're long past that, but from fear. Every illness could be your last. Every cut could fester into gangrene. Every whore could carry the disease that rots you from the inside out. You help Rodriguez sip water, noting how his hands shake and his eyes have sunk into his skull. He'll live, probably, though he'll be weak for weeks. In the corner, Williams moans through his laudanum haze, learning to live as a one-legged pirate. 2 men died during the night, sewn into their hammocks and sent to feed the fish. Caesar looks exhausted but satisfied. A 50% survival rate counts as a medical triumph. You leave the sickbay grateful for your health and terrified of losing it, knowing that tomorrow could find you shivering in a hammock while Caesar prepares his bone saw. Such is the pirate's bargain with death. It comes more often from within than from enemy cannon, and there's no glory in dying from the flux. The lookout's cry sends lightning through your veins. Sail ho, 2 points off the starboard bow. You drop the rope you're splicing and scramble into the rigging with 50 other pirates, all straining to glimpse the distant speck of canvas. Captain Hornigold raises his spyglass, studying the horizon with the patience of a hunting cat. She's a merchant brig, he finally announces, flying Dutch colours, riding low in the water. Boys, I believe we've found ourselves a prize. The transformation is instant. Your floating democracy becomes a military machine. Every man racing to his battle station. You're assigned to the gun crew of a 6-pounder on the main deck, still learning the deadly ballet of naval artillery. The gunner's mate, a scarred Welshman missing 3 fingers, barks orders as you help load the cannon. Remember, you scurvy dogs, we want to capture her, not sink her. Aim for the rigging until I say otherwise. Tay. Here's what the stories get wrong about pirate attacks. Actual combat is rare. Most merchant ships surrender the moment they see a black flag. Knowing resistance means death, while cooperation might mean survival. Pirates are businessmen of violence, preferring intimidation to actual fighting. Your ship carries 20 cannons, but you fired them in anger exactly twice in 3 months, both times. The merchant vessel struck its colors after the first broadside. Blood is bad for business. Dead men can't reveal where they've hidden the real valuables. The siren's revenge bears down on the merchant vessel like a hawk on a pigeon. You can see her crew now, scrambling on deck in panic. Some merchant captains arm their men, but most sailors won't die protecting cargo that doesn't belong to them. Your captain orders a warning shot across their bow, a single cannon firing blank charges to announce intentions. The sound rolls across the water like thunder, and you watch the Dutch ship's crew freeze, calculating their odds. The psychological warfare begins before any real shooting. Your crewmates crowd the rails, waving cutlasses and pistols, screaming threats in a dozen languages. Some have blackened their faces with soot for extra menace. The musicians, yes. Pirates keep musicians for exactly this purpose. Play martial drums and fifes, creating a cacophony designed to shatter enemy morale. It's theatre, but deadly serious theatre. The more terrifying you appear, the less likely you'll need to prove it. The Dutch captain apparently feels brave today. Instead of striking colours, he orders his ship to flee, cramming on every sail. Hornigold curses colourfully and orders pursuit. This is where pirate modifications pay off. Your ship sacrifices cargo capacity for speed. With a hull scraped clean of barnacles and an extra sail configuration that would horrify traditional sailors, but catches wind like a demon. The chase lasts 2 hours, the gap steadily closing as the overladen merchant ship wallows through the swells. When you're within proper gun range, Hornigold orders chain shot loaded, 2 cannonballs connected by chain, designed to shred sails and rigging. You help ram the charge home, then stand clear as the gunner aims. The broadside fires in sequence, each cannon adding its voice to the symphony of destruction. Through the smoke, you see the merchant's mainmast tangle in ruined canvas, her speed dropping to nothing. One more broadside should convince them, but these Dutch prove stubborn. Musket fire crackles from their deck, and you hear the buzz of bullets passing overhead. A man near you grunts and falls, clutching his shoulder. Now it's personal. The quartermaster distributes weapons from the arms chest. Cutlasses, boarding axes, pistols loaded with shot and buck. You check your pistol twice, knowing you'll get one shot before close combat begins. Your hands shake slightly, though you pretend it's excitement rather than terror. Historians still argue whether pirates were better fighters than naval sailors. The answer is complicated. You're not drilled in formation fighting like Navy men, but you're motivated by profit rather than patriotism. Every man knows his exact share of the prize, one full portion for ordinary seamen like you. Extra shares for specialized roles. The captain gets 2 shares, the quartermaster 1.5. Lose a limb in battle and the articles guarantee compensation. It's warfare as business venture. The boarding itself is controlled chaos. Grappling hooks fly across the narrowing gap between ships, iron claws biting into the merchant's rail. You're in the second wave, following the proven fighters who'll absorb the initial resistance. The first man across takes a boarding pike through the gut, screaming as he falls into the churning water between hulls. The second man shoots the pikeman point blank, then disappears into the smoke of battle. Your turn comes too quickly. You swing across on a rope, landing hard on the blood-slicked deck. A Dutch sailor charges with a club, and training takes over. You parry with your cutlass, feeling the shock run up your arm, then shoot him in the thigh with your pistol. He drops, howling, and you step over him to join the melee. The fighting is brutal but brief, outnumbered 3-1. The merchants quickly realize the futility of resistance. "Quarter," their captain finally shouts. "We ask quarter." The fighting stops like someone closed a valve. Pirates step back from their opponents, their weapons remain ready. This is the critical moment. Honor the surrender, and word spreads that compliance means survival. Break it, and every future prize fights to the death. Hornigold accepts their surrender with formal courtesy that seems absurd given the blood pooling on deck. Now comes the real piracy, organized looting. The quartermaster leads search parties through the ship, cataloging everything valuable. The cargo manifest claims they're carrying sugar and tobacco to Amsterdam. But manifests lie. You help tear apart the captain's cabin, finding a hidden chest of Spanish pieces of 8 behind false paneling. Another team discovers bolts of silk hidden among the sugar barrels. The ship's medicine chest, worth its weight in gold, gets carefully transferred to your vessel. The Dutch crew huddles on deck while their possessions are ransacked. Pirates take personal items, good clothes, navigational instruments, anything useful or valuable. You claim a pair of leather boots from a sailor about your size, infinitely better than your rotting footwear. Some of your crewmates get rougher, stripping men of wedding rings and beating those who resist. The quartermaster intervenes when things go too far. Dead or maimed sailors can't spread the word about merciful treatment. The final tally is respectable. 8,000 pieces of 8 in coin, 50 bolts of silk, 6 casks of wine, the medicine chest, navigational instruments including a precious chronometer, and enough sugar to keep the crew happy for months. The Dutch ship itself is too slow for piracy, but too valuable to burn. Hornigold puts a prize crew aboard to sail her to Nassau, where she'll be sold with no questions asked. You're not selected for prize duty, which is fine. Prize crews sometimes decide to keep sailing and never return. Before releasing the Dutch crew, there's one more tradition: recruiting. The quartermaster asks if any man wants to join the pirates. 3 step forward. All young sailors who probably figured their chances are better with you than returning to Amsterdam to explain losing the cargo. They're welcomed aboard with the same vote that accepted you weeks ago. Democracy in action. Funded by theft and enforced by violence. As you sail away, leaving the crippled Dutch ship to limp home, you count your share in your head. Maybe 300 pieces of 8 from this prize alone, more than you'd earn in 2 years of honest sailing. The Dutch sailor you shot is probably dying on deck, but you try not to think about that. You're a pirate now, and pirates don't get rich by feeling guilty. The blood washes off easier than the memory, but both fade with enough rum and distance. The quartermaster unfurls the ship's articles on the capstan, ready for the monthly reading that keeps 200 violent men from murdering each other. You gather with your messmates as he clears his throat and begins. Article the 1st. Every man shall have an equal vote in affairs of moment. The familiar words wash over you, but you listen anyway. These rules are the only thing standing between civilization and chaos when you pack this many armed criminals into a floating wooden box. Article the 2nd. Every man shall have an equal share of provisions and liquors at any time seized, and may use them at pleasure unless scarcity makes it necessary for the common good that a retrenchment may be voted. Even the distribution of biscuits follows democratic law out here. You've seen men flogged on merchant ships for taking an extra ration. Here, the vote determines everything from rum portions to raid targets. The articles continue, each one addressing the 1,000 ways men can wrong each other at sea. No gambling with dice or cards. Too many crews have imploded over accusations of cheating. All disputes to be settled on shore with sword and pistol, with the quartermaster serving as referee. No women aboard ship. Dressed as women, that is. Everyone knows about Mary Read sailing disguised as a man 3 ships over. But as long as she keeps the pretense, nobody officially notices. Here's something historians still argue about. Were pirate codes more progressive than national laws? In some ways, absolutely. Your ship's articles guarantee compensation for injuries. 600 pieces of 8 for a lost right arm, 100 for an eye. Set rates that would make a modern insurance company jealous. Compare that to the Royal Navy, where a crippled sailor gets discharged to beg in the streets. But these same articles prescribe death for desertion, cowardice, or bringing a naked flame near the powder magazine. Progressive and harsh aren't mutually exclusive. The punishment for theft fascinates you in its poetic justice. Steal from a shipmate and you face marooning, abandoned on a deserted island with a pistol, 1 bullet, a flask of water, and time to think about your life choices. It's technically more merciful than hanging, but most men would prefer the quick drop. You've heard stories of marooned pirates surviving for years, going mad from isolation, building signal fires that no ship ever sees. Others use that single bullet within the first day. Fighting below decks earns a specific punishment. Moses' Law, 40 lashes minus 1. The biblical reference adds gravity to what's essentially a practical rule. Fighting in confined spaces could sink the ship. You've seen a man take 39 lashes for pulling a knife during an argument over dice. By the 20th stroke, his back looked like raw meat. By the 30th, he'd passed out. The crew voted to stop there, technically fulfilling the law while showing mercy. He lived, barely, and never fought below decks again. The articles governing combat make cold-blooded sense. First man to spot a prize gets first choice of weapons from the captured ship. First man to board gets first choice of clothing. Desert your post during battle, and you forfeit all shares plus face whatever punishment the crew votes, usually death, occasionally marooning if you're well liked. The code turns bravery into economic incentive, which works better than any amount of patriotic speeches. Your favorite article is the one mandating musicians to rest on the Sabbath. Every other day, they must provide entertainment on demand, but Sundays are sacred. It seems oddly civilized for a pirate code, this protection of leisure time. The musicians appreciate it. Your ship's fiddler, an escaped slave from Barbados, plays haunting melodies on Sunday evenings that make grown killers weep into their rum. The sexual articles are blunt as a boarding axe. Forcing a woman means death. No exceptions. No trial beyond establishing facts, or rape is bad for business. It turns potential allies into sworn enemies and makes every captured crew fight to protect their passengers. The pragmatism of pirate justice often aligns with morality, even if for purely practical reasons. You've heard of crews that ignored this rule. They don't last long. Hunted by both navies and other pirates who don't want their reputation tainted. The democratic process extends to punishments. When Seamus O'Brien got caught stealing from the Common Fund last month, the crew held a formal trial. The quartermaster prosecuted. Another pirate defended. And Captain Hornigold served as judge. though the final verdict came from majority vote. O'Brien argued desperation, claiming he needed money for medicine. The crew voted for mercy, forfeit his shares from the next 3 prizes but remain aboard. Naval justice would have hanged him without blinking. Some articles address problems unique to pirate life. No man shall talk of breaking up their way of living till each has shared £1,000. Prevents crews from dissolving after minor successes. The lights and candles must be put out at 8 o'clock, reduces fire risk and drunken nighttime brawls. Each man must keep his piece, cutlass, and pistols clean and fit for service, ensures combat readiness. Every rule stems from hard experience, probably written in someone's blood. The compensation schedule reads like a grim insurance policy. Lost leg, 800 pieces of 8, right, or 700, left. Lost finger, 100 pieces of 8, but only 50 for the pinky. Shot in the body without lasting damage, 200 pieces of 8, plus first dibs on medical supplies. The quartermaster maintains a ledger tracking who's owed what, settling accounts after each successful prize. You've seen men compare stumps, arguing over whose injury deserves higher compensation. Enforcement varies wildly between crews. Some ships run tight as naval vessels, punishing every infraction with mechanical precision. Others treat the articles more as guidelines, voting exceptions for popular crew members. Your ship falls somewhere in between. Serious crimes like theft or cowardice meet swift justice, while minor infractions might earn a warning or reduce shares. The key is consistency. Men will tolerate harsh rules if they're applied fairly. The monthly reading concludes with additions voted since last time. New article. Anyone caught pissing in the hold instead of using the head forfeits a day's rum ration. Another. The ship's cats are crew members and killing one means compensation to the crew as if it were a man's finger. These amendments seem absurd until you remember that cats kill rats, and rats eat food and spread disease. Everything connects in the floating ecosystem of a pirate ship. As the quartermaster rolls up the articles, you reflect on the strange society you've joined. Murderers and thieves governing themselves with more democracy than most nations, rules protecting the weak, ensuring fair shares, providing for the injured. It's not utopia. These same men would slit a throat for profit, but it's remarkably civilized for organized crime. The articles create structure in chaos, turning a mob into a crew. Without them, piracy would be impossible. With them, it's merely dangerous, which passes for safety in your new life. The dice clatter across the deck for the 100th time tonight, and tempers are rising with the stakes. Officially, gambling is forbidden by the articles, but that just means the quartermaster turns a blind eye as long as nobody pulls a knife. You're watching, not playing. You learned that lesson the hard way your first week. Losing a month's future shares to a rigged game. Now you content yourself with other entertainments, of which there are precious few between raids. Music saves more lives than medicine aboard a pirate ship. Your fiddler, the Barbadian freeman named Tobias, can make his instrument weep, laugh, or spur men to dance jigs that shake the rigging. When he plays the old songs from home, English ballads, Irish reels, African rhythms that survived the Middle Passage, you see hardened killers wipe away tears. The ship also boasts a penny whistle player and a drummer who claims he played for King Louis before some unspecified scandal. Together, they create the soundtrack to your floating prison. Story time after the evening meal is sacred. Men take turns spinning yarns, and the quality varies from elaborate lies to genuine adventures that sound like lies. Old Bartholomew, who sailed these waters for 30 years, tells of the earthquake that swallowed Port Royal, how he watched an entire city slide into the sea while church bells rang underwater. Rodriguez swears his grandmother was a witch who could call storms, though he conveniently can't remember the incantation. You contribute a ghost story from your village about a headless sailor who haunts the docks, embellishing details until even you half believe it. Historians still argue whether pirates were literate enough to read for pleasure. The answer is mixed. Maybe 1 man in 10 can read beyond recognizing common words, but those who can become invaluable entertainment sources. The bosun owns a battered copy of The General History of Pirates, reading aloud about Blackbeard and Calico Jack while the crew argues over accuracy. "That's bollocks," someone always shouts. "I sailed with Jack, and he never did half that." The books get passed around until they fall apart. Pages used for everything from rolling tobacco to less dignified purposes. The real entertainment comes during shore leave, those brief explosions of debauchery in pirate-friendly ports. Nassau is the current favorite, a sprawling collection of tents, shacks, and taverns where anything can be bought and nothing is forbidden. You stumble off the ship with 3 months' wages burning in your pocket, determined to forget the taste of Weevilly biscuit and the smell of 200 unwashed men. The brothels operate with businesslike efficiency. Their madams often former pirates themselves who know exactly what sailors need. You choose a Cuban girl who speaks enough English to laugh at your jokes and doesn't comment on your tar-stained hands. For a handful of pieces of 8, she provides not just physical release, but the illusion of tenderness, stroking your hair, listening to your bragging, pretending to believe you're a merchant sailor rather than a thief. The fantasy lasts exactly as long as your money. Tavern fights provide free entertainment for those still conscious enough to watch. Pirates from different ships settle old scores with fists, bottles, and occasionally cutlasses if things get serious, and you've learned to spot the warning signs, voices rising, hands drifting toward weapons, that moment of crystalline silence before violence explodes. Smart men grab their drinks and find good viewing positions. Stupid ones try to intervene and wake up missing teeth. The gambling in port makes shipboard dice games look like church raffles. Card sharps, many of them women with nimble fingers and distracting décolletage, separate pirates from their treasure with mathematical precision. Cockfights draw huge crowds, men screaming themselves hoarse as roosters tear each other apart in spurts of blood and feathers. You bet on a one-eyed bird that reminds you of your quartermaster and lose 2 weeks' shares when it catches a spur to the throat. Some entertainment is more refined. A French pirate ship has a man who performs Shakespeare from memory, though his Hamlet sounds suspiciously like a Parisian dock worker. Musicians hold impromptu concerts on the beach, styles mixing as English fiddles meet African drums and Spanish guitars. Dancing happens anywhere music plays, wild, drunken reels that would scandalize proper society, but seem perfectly appropriate when you might die tomorrow. The bear baiting draws the biggest crowds. Some enterprising soul captured a black bear from the Carolinas and makes a fortune letting men pay to watch dogs fight it. The bear, scarred and mean from months of combat, tears through mastiffs like they're made of paper. You watch once, then never again. Something about the chained animal fighting for entertainment hits too close to home. You're all bears in a pit, really. Just with better rum, theatre, if you can call it that. Happens when drunk pirates decide to recreate famous battles or mock their social betters. You've seen elaborate parodies of British naval ceremonies, complete with a Lord Admiral wearing a mop for a wig and issuing orders in falsetto. Political satire thrives. King George, the colonial governors, and especially the merchants who claim pirates are destroying commerce while charging criminal prices for basic goods. The performances are crude but cathartic, letting men laugh at the powers that would hang them. Between the scheduled debaucheries come quieter pleasures. Men carve scrimshaw from whale teeth, creating intricate designs during the long watches. Others tie elaborate knots, turning rope into art. A few maintain journals, though they're careful about what they write. Literacy can be evidence at your trial. You've taken up whittling, turning scraps of wood into crude figures. Your masterpiece is a 6-inch mermaid that looks more like a manatee, but you're proud of it anyway. Swimming, when anchored in safe waters, provides relief from the heat and the ship's stench. Pirates strip naked and dive from the rigging, whooping like children. Sharks are a constant concern, so armed men stand watch while others splash. You've learned to swim properly only since joining the crew. Ironic that criminals taught you a skill that might save your life. Racing between ships becomes competitive sport, with betting naturally attached. The quietest entertainment is the most precious, solitude. Finding a moment alone on a ship crammed with humanity requires creativity and timing. You've discovered a spot where the bowsprit meets the hull, barely big enough for one man but hidden from casual view. There you can sit for a blessed hour, watching phosphorescence trail in the water and pretending you're somewhere else, anywhere else. The stars don't judge. The sea doesn't care about your crimes. And for brief moments, you remember who you were before you became what you are. Shore leave always ends the same way. Broke, hungover, probably diseased, climbing back aboard with empty pockets and fuzzy memories on. The ship seems smaller, smellier, more prison-like after tasting freedom. But there's comfort in routine, safety in the familiar faces of men who die beside you, if not necessarily for you. Tobias strikes up a melancholy tune on his fiddle as Nassau fades behind you. Someone starts a card game that's definitely not gambling, just friendly wagering between mates. Old Bartholomew begins another story about a mermaid he definitely didn't imagine. Life returns to what passes for normal when normal includes hunting merchant ships for profit. At least you're never bored. Terror, misery, and violence, sure, but never boredom. The screaming starts at dawn. Jenkins, caught stealing from the common fund, kneels on deck while the quartermaster reads his sentence. Death or marooning. Crew's choice. The vote isn't close. Nobody likes Jenkins anyway. Not since he knifed Cooper during a card game. Marooning wins by 40 votes, which sounds merciful until you understand what that means in these waters. Captain Hornigold points to a strip of sand barely visible on the horizon, what locals call a key, too small for fresh water, too barren for food. Jenkins goes pale as old sailcloth. You help lower the boat that will row him to his doom. The condemned man gets traditional marooning supplies: 1 pistol, 1 bullet, 1 flask of water, and 1 flask of rum. Some crews give a knife too, but your articles specify just the basics. Jenkins begs, offering hidden treasure, sexual favors, promises of eternal loyalty. The quartermaster remains stone-faced. Pirate justice doesn't bend once the vote is cast. That way lies chaos. The row to the sandbar takes 20 minutes of tense silence. Jenkins alternates between cursing and weeping, a man watching his death approach 1 oar stroke at a time. You've drawn boat duty, so you get a front row seat to human desperation. He tries to jump overboard twice, preferring drowning to the slow death awaiting him. Big Pierre holds him down, while Rodriguez rows steadily, eyes fixed on the horizon. Here's what the romantic pirate stories don't tell you. Marooning is psychological torture perfected over generations. That single bullet isn't for hunting. What would you hunt on a barren key? It's for when the thirst becomes unbearable, when your tongue swells and your lips crack and you start drinking seawater, knowing it'll drive you mad. The bullet is mercy, self-administered. Most men use it within 3 days. The stubborn ones last a week before the sun and thirst break them. You reach the quay, maybe 300 yards long and 50 wide. Seabirds scatter as the boat scrapes sand. No trees, no shade, just coral sand and broken shells. Jenkins stumbles out, falls to his knees, then tries to climb back in the boat. Pierre shoves him back with an oar. Crew's vote, mate, nothing personal. It's entirely personal. Of course, Jenkins sealed his fate the day he pulled that knife on Cooper. Pirates forgive many things, but not breaking the brotherhood. As you row away, Jenkins stands at the waterline screaming. Not words anymore, just raw sound. By evening, he'll be digging for water he'll never find. By tomorrow, he'll try building a shelter from driftwood and seaweed. By the third day, if he's still alive, he'll be eyeing that bullet like a lover. The last you see is a tiny figure against white sand, waving his arms like he could call you back through sheer will. Rodriguez crosses himself and mutters a prayer. You just row harder. Flogging happens more frequently, usually for lesser offences. Last week, Simmons fell asleep on watch. Not a capital crime, but dangerous enough to warrant punishment. 30 lashes. The crew voted, administered by the boatswain's mate with professional detachment. They tied Simmons to the mainmast, shirt stripped, back exposed to tropical sun and leather whip. The first strike split skin. By the 10th, blood runs freely. By the 20th, you can see muscle. Simmons takes it quietly, knowing screams would only shame him further. The Cat o' Nine Tails is a masterpiece of efficient cruelty. 9 lengths of cord, each knotted at intervals, delivering 9 wounds with every swing. Salt water thrown on the wounds prevents infection, but multiplies agony. You've seen men pass out by the 15th lash, their backs looking like badly butchered meat. The scars last forever, raised welts that tell stories of crimes and survival. Old pirates compare flogging scars like military decorations. Keel hauling, thankfully rare, remains the worst non-fatal punishment. You've only seen it once, when a Dutch sailor tried to light a pipe near the powder magazine. The crew debated between death and keel hauling for 3 hours before voting for the latter. They tied ropes to his wrists and ankles, threw him overboard, then dragged him under the ship's keel from one side to the other. The barnacles covering the hull shred flesh like broken glass. He emerged unconscious, his back and chest looking like he'd wrestled a school of sharks. Caesar spent 6 hours picking barnacle fragments from the wounds. The Dutchman lived, but never fully recovered, moving stiffly, sleeping on his stomach, flinching when anyone approached from behind. Historians still argue whether pirates were crueler than naval forces in their punishments. The evidence suggests they were more democratic, but not more merciful. The Royal Navy flogs men for minor infractions, but at least there's a legal framework. Pirate justice depends entirely on mob mood. A popular man might escape serious punishment for major crimes, while someone universally disliked could face death for relatively minor offences. It's democracy's dark side, justice by popularity contest. Minor punishments include creative humiliations. Men caught fighting below decks might be tied together for a full day. forced to eat, sleep, and relieve themselves as conjoined twins. Thieves of small items face time in the bilges, standing knee-deep in the foulest water imaginable while pumping for hours. One memorable punishment involved a man who wouldn't stop whistling at night. They gagged him with oakum for 12 hours, teaching him the value of silence. The psychological punishments often cut deepest. Cowardice in battle means losing your share of plunder, but worse, losing respect. Cowards eat last, sleep in the worst spots, and find themselves mysteriously assigned to every dangerous or disgusting duty. Some request transfer to other ships at the next port, unable to bear the constant shame. Others try to redeem themselves through suicidal bravery in the next fight, often dying in the attempt. Moses' law, 39 lashes for various offenses, has biblical origins but practical applications. The Jews supposedly stopped at 39 to avoid accidentally killing someone with the 40th stroke, showing mercy with injustice. Pirates adopted this for the same reason. Dead men can't work sails or fire cannons. The quartermaster counts each lash aloud, partly for accuracy, partly so the victim knows how much longer his ordeal lasts. 25, the whip cracks. 26, blood spatters the deck. You've learned to navigate this brutal justice system through careful observation and tactical cowardice. Never be the first to suggest harsh punishment, but never argue against the crew's mood. Vote with the majority unless you feel strongly enough to risk becoming a target yourself. Keep your thieving to enemy ships, your fighting to appropriate venues, and your complaints to trusted messmates. The same democracy that protects you can turn lethal if you misstep. The aftermath of punishment often matters more than the act itself. Men who take their lashes without complaint earn respect. Those who beg or cry lose standing permanently. Jenkins, now 3 days marooned, probably used his bullet by now, or maybe he's one of the stubborn ones, building signal fires from seaweed, praying for rescue that won't come. Either way, his empty hammock serves as a reminder. The articles that protect you also bind you. Break them at your peril. Tonight during dinner, men tell stories of famous maroonings. Alexander Selkirk, abandoned for 4 years before rescue, inspiring tales of impossible survival. The unnamed pirate who supposedly built a raft from turtle shells and driftwood, paddling to civilization. Most stories end with bleached bones on sandy shores, but pirates need hope that justice isn't always fatal. You push your burgoo around your bowl, appetite gone. Tomorrow you could be rowing someone else to their sandy grave, or being rowed yourself. The only protection is the thin line of articles and the fickle democracy of violent men. Sleep comes hard, haunted by Jenkins's screams and the knowledge that pirate justice shows no mercy to those who break the code. The new recruit stands at the mainmast, and you'd swear you're looking at your past self. Same nervous stance, same way of trying to look tough, while obviously terrified. Except this recruit has curves that no amount of loose clothing can fully hide. Name's William Reed, she says in a voice pitched unnaturally low. Everyone pretends to believe it, though you'd bet your next share that half the crew knows exactly what's under those baggy slops. The fiction must be maintained. The articles are clear about women aboard. Mary Reed, her real name is an open secret within a month, works twice as hard as any man to prove herself. You watch her scramble up the rigging faster than sailors with 20 years' experience, take her turn at the bilge pump without complaint, and drink her rum ration without watering it down like some green hands do. During her first boarding action, she's first across the gap, pistol in one hand and cutlass in the other, screaming like a banshee. After that, nobody questions her place among the crew. The official ban on women creates situations that would be comical if they weren't deadly serious. When a merchant ship yields female passengers, the quartermaster faces a dilemma. The articles say no women aboard, but leaving them on a crippled vessel invites disaster. The usual solution is to transfer them to the first neutral ship encountered, but until then, they're confined to a locked cabin with guards posted. You've stood such guard duty, listening to the terrified whispers inside while pretending you don't understand their French or Spanish prayers. Here's what historians still argue about. How many women actually served as pirates? More than official records suggest, certainly. Besides Mary Read and her famous compatriot Anne Bonny, you've heard credible stories of at least a dozen others in these waters alone. The Chinese pirate fleets supposedly include hundreds of women, some commanding their own junks. But in the Caribbean, the fiction of maleness must be maintained for the crew's legal protection. If captured, claiming ignorance about a crewmate's sex might mean the difference between hanging and acquittal. The presence of women in port towns tells a different story. Nassau crawls with wives, mistresses, and working girls who form the economic backbone of pirate society. They run taverns, fence stolen goods, gather intelligence from loose-lipped sailors, and maintain homes where pirates can pretend to be normal men between voyages. The Madam of the Cock and Crown, a former actress named Eleanor, supposedly has more influence over pirate politics than half the captains in the harbour. You've taken up with a mulatto seamstress named Lucia during your shore leaves. She doesn't ask where your money comes from, and you don't ask about the other men who visit when you're at sea. It's a practical arrangement. She mends your clothes and provides a bed that doesn't sway with the waves, while you pay her rent and bring exotic fabrics found in merchant holds, sometimes, lying in her arms. You can almost imagine a different life. Then morning comes, and you're back to being what you are. The sexual dynamics aboard ship require careful navigation even without women present. 200 men crammed together for months, many who haven't touched a woman since their last shore leave, creates tensions that the articles can't fully address. The official stance is clear. Sodomy is punishable by death. The reality is more complex. What happens in the dark corners of the hold stays there, as long as it's consensual and doesn't interfere with ship's operations. You've learned to sleep with your back to the bulkhead and not ask questions about noises in the night. Some pirates solve their needs through matelotage, a formal partnership between two men that goes beyond mere friendship. These arrangements, borrowed from the buccaneers of Hispaniola, involve sharing everything: food, plunder, danger, and sometimes beds. If one dies, the other inherits his possessions. The quartermaster records these partnerships in his ledger with the same seriousness as marriage contracts, whether they're all sexual relationships or some are just practical alliances. Nobody asks. Privacy is a luxury pirates can't afford, so they create it through selective blindness. The treatment of women during raids varies wildly by crew and captain. Some ships operate under strict codes. Women passengers are not to be touched. Their cabins remain inviolate, their persons sacrosanct. Violators face immediate death. Other crews are less civilized, and their reputations precede them like a plague wind. Ships carrying women passengers will fight to the death, rather than surrender to certain crews. Your own captain enforces the protective articles strictly, partly from moral conviction, partly from practical necessity. Rape turns you from a thief into a monster in the public eye. and monsters get hunted more enthusiastically. Mary Read's presence creates its own complications. During one memorable shore leave, she took offense to a drunken pirate pawing at a tavern girl and challenged him to a duel. The fight took place on the beach at dawn, pistols at 20 paces, then cutlasses if both survived. Mary put her ball through his shoulder, then carved her initials into his chest with her blade. Nobody paws tavern girls in her presence anymore. The incident only increased her standing among the crew, who appreciate anyone willing to enforce rough justice. The strangest aspect of the gender dynamics is how irrelevant they become during crisis. When storms hit or enemy ships attack, nobody cares what's between your legs, only whether you can tie a bowline in a hurricane or reload a cannon under fire. Mary Read proves herself so thoroughly that newer recruits who don't know her secret follow her lead without question. She's teaching the ship's boys knots and curses in equal measure, creating a new generation of pirates who think nothing strange about taking orders from William. You've seen her in quiet moments when she thinks nobody's watching, and the mask slips, a hand unconsciously smoothing her shorn hair, a wistful look at women's clothing in captured trunks, a flinch when someone makes crude jokes about the fairer sex, but then the moment passes, and she's back to being one of the lads, out drinking and out cursing sailors who've been at it since before she was born. It's a performance that never ends. Even in sleep, she's trained herself not to cry out during nightmares in her natural voice. The economics of piracy create unexpected opportunities for women willing to grasp them. In Nassau, former pirates' widows run some of the most successful businesses, having inherited their husbands' ill-gotten gains and the connections that came with them. A woman known only as the Commodore supposedly owns a third of the harbor's warehouses, using them to store goods that nobody asks questions about. She employs former pirates as guards and negotiates with merchant captains who'd hang her workers without blinking. Power flows where money goes, regardless of gender. Your own views on women have evolved since joining this life. The civilized world's protections and restrictions seem equally absurd from the deck of a pirate ship. Women can fight, scheme, endure, and lead as well as any man. Mary Read proves it daily. They can also be victims, accomplices, or powers behind the throne. The artificial divisions of proper society dissolve in the face of survival's demands. You're all criminals here, all facing the same noose if caught. Gender seems a small thing compared to the democracy of death. As another day ends and Mary takes her watch at the helm, steering by stars she navigates as well as any sailing master. You reflect on the contradictions. The articles ban women to prevent conflict, yet here she stands, preventing more fights than she causes. Society says women are weak, yet she's tougher than half your crew. The world divides into male and female, but the sea recognizes only competent and dead. You nod to her as you pass, and she nods back, two pirates acknowledging each other, nothing more or less. Tomorrow, you might die together in battle, or dance together at the end of a rope. For now, you're shipmates, and that's all that matters in this floating republic of the damned. The stars wheel overhead as you struggle with the astrolabe, trying to shoot the sun's noon altitude without embarrassing yourself. Navigation is the difference between rich pirates and dead ones. Yet most of your crew can barely tell latitude from longitude. The sailing master, a Portuguese genius named Carvalho who learned his trade on slavers before seeing the light, piracy pays better, watches your clumsy efforts with barely concealed amusement. No, he sighs, adjusting your grip. The horizon must be steady, yes? you rock like drunk monkey. Your ship owns 3 precious navigation instruments, each worth more than most pirates see in a lifetime. The compass, obvious enough. Though you've learned magnetic north isn't true north, and the variation changes depending on where you sail. Knowledge that would have seemed like sorcery in your farming village. The astrolabe measures the sun's height, letting Cavallo calculate latitude with mysterious mathematics. The prized possession is a stolen chronometer that keeps London time, allowing longitude calculations that most navigators can only dream of. Dead reckoning rules daily navigation. Cavallo teaches you to estimate speed by tossing a wood chip tied to a knotted line over the side, counting knots as they pass through your fingers in 30 seconds, hence knots for nautical speed. Direction comes from the compass, corrected for variation. Time comes from half-hour sandglasses, turned religiously by ship's boys who face flogging if they forget. Combine these, add some arithmetic, and theoretically you know where you are. Theoretically. Here's what the maritime academies won't tell you. Most navigation is educated guessing mixed with local knowledge. Cavallo can smell land 2 days before you see it. Something about how the wind changes. Birds appear. Clouds form differently over islands. He reads currents like a book, knowing the Gulf Stream will push you north at 3 knots off Florida, but slack to nothing near the Bahamas. Watercolor tells depth and bottom type. Flotsam reveals proximity to shipping lanes. It's science, but the kind learned through decades of watching the sea's moods. Charts are worth killing for, literally. Your ship's collection includes stolen British Admiralty charts, captured Spanish rutters, and hand-drawn maps bought from retired pirates in Nassau taverns. Each shows different hazards, different depths, different secrets. Cavallo spreads them on his table like a fortune teller reading cards, comparing details, noting discrepancies. The Windward Passage shows 3 different positions on 3 different charts. We use Spanish one, he decides. Spanish very careful with gold ship routes. The political geography of piracy requires its own navigation. Spanish waters mean guardian coster ships hunting you with fanatical determination. British territories vary. Some governors take bribes. Others hang pirates for sport. French islands might offer shelter or betrayal depending on who's currently at war with whom. Dutch ports usually welcome anyone with gold to spend. Portuguese Brazil is death to visit, but rich to raid. You memorize safe harbors like Catechism, Nassau, Tortuga, Madagascar, the hidden coves of Cuba, where corrupt officials look away for a price. Coastal navigation relies on landmarks passed down through generations of pirates. Skull Rock off Antigua, shaped like its name suggests. The Three Sisters, a line of hills visible 30 miles out from Jamaica. Dead Man's Chest, the tiny island where Blackbeard supposedly marooned 15 men with 1 bottle of rum. Each feature means safety or danger depending on your purpose. Merchants use the same landmarks, which makes ambush sites predictable for those who know where to look. Weather patterns matter more than any chart. Hurricane season turns the Caribbean into a ship graveyard from June to November. You learn to read the signs, long swells from empty horizons, the barometer dropping like a hanged man, clouds moving against the wind in upper levels. When these omens align, wise pirates run for shelter regardless of prizes in sight. You've ridden out 1 hurricane in a protected cove, watching 100-foot trees snap like matchsticks while your ship yanked at her anchors like a chained beast. The storm killed 12 men who thought they could ride it out at sea. The necessity of accurate navigation creates strange partnerships, and pirates share information about new hazards, change channels, and naval patrol patterns with an openness that would shock merchants. Yesterday's enemy might save your life tomorrow with a warning about a new reef or a shifted sandbar. Carvalho maintains correspondence with navigators throughout the Caribbean, using a cipher for sensitive information. Knowledge is survival, and survival trumps rivalry. Longitude remains the great mystery. The chronometer helps, but is temperamental, requiring constant adjustment and comparison with local noon. Most navigators still use lunar distances, measuring the moon's position relative to stars and consulting massive tables of calculations. Carvalho tries teaching you this art, but the mathematics make your head spin. Is okay, he consoles. Most navigators just pretend to understand, make good show with instruments, then sail to known landmark and follow coast. The human element of navigation fascinates you. Carvalho keeps a mental map of every voyage, remembering where currents ran strong, where reefs lurked just below the surface, where fresh water flowed from hidden springs on seemingly barren islands. This knowledge lives only in his head and the heads of others like him. Charts show the what, but navigators know the why and when. That reef is only dangerous at low tide. That passage is safe except during the spring current reversals. That bay offers shelter from northern storms, but becomes a trap when the wind shifts south. Pirates steal more than gold. They steal knowledge. When capturing a ship, the sailing master's notes are almost as valuable as the cargo. Merchant captains often carry private rutters showing secret routes, safe anchorages known only to their company, depths and bearings for tricky harbours. Carvalho collects these like holy relics, comparing notes, building a comprehensive picture of Caribbean navigation that would make the Royal Navy jealous. Akipkitan. He guards this knowledge carefully, knowing it's his insurance against age and injury. The tools of navigation require constant maintenance. Salt air corrodes metal, humidity warps wood, and tropical sun cracks glass. You learn to oil the compass bearing, replace the astrolabe's worn markings, and protect the chronometer like a newborn baby. Sand glasses need turning at exactly the right moment, or your dead reckoning fails. The log line must be measured regularly as rope stretches. Even the lead line for measuring depth needs checking. The tallow in its hollow base that brings up bottom samples must be fresh. Night navigation brings its own challenges and beauties. Polaris, the North Star, hangs steady for latitude checks. The Southern Cross rises as you sail south, a constellation invisible from your English homeland. Planets wander through fixed star patterns, useful for lunar calculations if you're skilled enough. On clear nights, the Milky Way arcs overhead like God's own chart, and phosphorescence in the water leaves trails of green fire behind the ship. You're learning to steer by stars when clouds hide the compass, feeling the swell's direction, listening to the wind's changes. The greatest navigation skill is knowing when you're lost. Carvalho admits this freely. Every navigator ends up somewhere unexpected eventually. The key is recognizing it quickly and taking corrective action. Shoot the sun at noon, even if you think you know where you are. Check the chart against reality. When in doubt, find a landmark and start over. Pride kills more navigators than storms. Better to arrive late than not arrive, Carvalho says. Words that could serve as the navigator's creed. Your education continues daily. This morning, Carvalho showed you how to use a cross staff for lunar distances. though your crossed eyes suggest more practice is needed. Tomorrow, he promises to explain why compass variation changes and how to predict it. Next week, if weather permits, you'll learn to find longitude by Jupiter's moons, a technique so complex most naval officers can't master it. For now, you practice with the chip log, counting knots and calculating speed while the Caribbean sun burns navigation into your brain and soul. You're no longer just muscle and sword. You're becoming a true seaman, capable of finding your way across trackless waters to where prizes wait. That's worth more than any share of plunder. The harbour at Nassau sprawls before you like a pirate's fever dream. Hundreds of ships at anchor, their masts creating a dead forest against the tropical sky. Smoke from cooking fires mixes with the stench of rotting seaweed and human waste, creating a perfume that somehow smells like freedom after months at sea. You're pulling at the oars of the ship's boat, ferrying the first load of pirates to shore, and every man aboard vibrates with anticipation. 3 months of prizes have filled your pockets, and Nassau stands ready to empty them. Fort Nassau guards the harbour, but it's a joke. Half the cannons don't work, and the British governor takes bribes with both hands. The real power here belongs to Benjamin Hornigold, your own captain, Henry Jennings, and the other pirate commodores who've turned this backwater into the Republic of Pirates. No king's law reaches these streets. The only rules are those enforced by cutlass and pistol, which suits your profession perfectly. You beach the boat and stumble onto sand that doesn't move. A sensation so strange after months at sea that several men fall to their knees. The transformation of Nassau from sleepy colonial outpost to pirate metropolis happened fast. When the War of Spanish Succession ended in 1714, thousands of privateers found themselves unemployed. Nassau offered a perfect base: natural harbour, proximity to shipping lanes, and a colonial government too weak to object. Now in 1717, the town houses perhaps 2,000 permanent residents and 10 times that many transients. Every other building is a tavern, brothel, or gambling den. The rest sell supplies, weapons, or services pirates need. You navigate the sandy streets with your messmates, pockets heavy with pieces of 8. The coins make a distinctive clink that draws whores, merchants, and thieves like blood draws sharks. A one-eyed woman offers you companionship before you've walked 10 yards. A child tries to cut your purse until Big Pierre cuffs him aside. Merchants shout from doorways, hawking everything from new boots to used teeth. The economy of Nassau runs on a simple principle: separate pirates from their money as quickly as possible. The Cock and Crown Tavern serves as your first stop, tradition demanding you buy a round for the house. The common room is packed with pirates from a dozen ships, the air thick with pipe smoke and lies. You recognize crew from Bellamy's Wider, Labouse's Defiant, and a dozen other vessels. National rivalries disappear here. English, French, Spanish, and Dutch pirates drink together, united by their shared profession. The rum flows like water, though it tastes considerably better than your ship's ration. Here's what historians still argue about. Was Nassau a functioning pirate democracy or barely controlled anarchy? The answer is both. Yes. Pirates elect their leaders and vote on major decisions, but enforcement relies entirely on voluntary compliance and the threat of violence. There's no jail, no courts, no police, just the rough justice of armed men who've agreed to certain rules. When disputes arise, they're settled by the sword on the beach at dawn. The cemetery is full of men who couldn't hold their liquor or their temper. The marketplace showcases globalization centuries before the term exists. Spanish doubloons by Chinese silk taken from French merchants who got it from Dutch traders who bought it from Portuguese smugglers. A captured cargo of Virginia tobacco trades for Brazilian sugar and Jamaican rum. Currency means nothing when everyone's money is stolen anyway. Barter rules, with pieces of 8 serving as the universal medium of exchange. You trade a silver candlestick for new boots and consider yourself lucky. Intelligence flows through Nassau like rum through a pirate's liver. Men discuss shipping schedules, naval movements, and which governors are currently taking bribes. A grizzled Welshman mentions the Spanish treasure fleet is late this year, probably storm delayed. A French pirate warns that the British Navy has increased patrols off Charleston. This information is gold. Trade it as carefully as physical plunder. You listen more than you talk, filing away details that might mean the difference between rich prizes and a hemp necklace. The brothels operate with surprising sophistication. The better establishments offer clean rooms, relatively disease-free women, and discretion about your activities. The madams, often retired prostitutes who've survived long enough to go into management, run tight ships, break their rules, no violence, payment up front, no more than 3 men per girl per night, and their enforcers will feed you to the harbour sharks. You choose an establishment called the Siren's Rest, where the rum isn't watered and the girls speak enough languages to understand your clumsy compliments. Tortuga, your other regular port, offers a different flavour of debauchery. Originally a buccaneer stronghold, it's rougher than Nassau, less organised, more dangerous. The French influence is stronger, the rum cheaper, the life expectancy shorter. You've been there twice, both times leaving quickly after witnessing violence that made your shipboard justice look civilized. A man crucified for cheating at cards. A woman flayed alive for poisoning pirates. Tortuga is where pirates go when Nassau feels too tame. Madagascar represents the ultimate pirate fantasy, a kingdom beyond any nation's reach. Pirates who've been there describe it in mythical terms. Native kingdoms that welcome pirates as allies. Endless supplies of food and water. Women who consider European pirates exotic prizes. The reality is probably less paradisiacal, but the dream draws men east around the Cape of Good Hope, chasing legends of pirate kings ruling tropical paradises. Your own ship talks of sailing there eventually, once everyone has enough gold to retire in style. The slave market in Nassau makes you uncomfortable, though you can't articulate why. Pirates steal everything else, why not people? But watching humans sold like cattle turns your stomach, especially when you recognize former crew members among the traders. The African members of your crew avoid this part of town entirely, and you understand why. Even in a society of thieves and murderers, some crimes feel worse than others. You hurry past, trying not to think about where your moral lines are drawn. Supplies for the next voyage must be purchased between debaucheries. The ship needs tar, canvas, rope, and 1,000 other items. Food markets offer slightly better quality than what Cookie usually procures. Salt pork that's merely old instead of ancient. Biscuit with fewer weevils. Dried fruit that might actually prevent scurvy. The prices are criminal. But what do merchants expect when selling to actual criminals? You contribute to purchasing a live pig for the ship, knowing it will provide fresh meat for a few weeks before ending up in the pot. Government, such as it exists, consists of the pirate council that meets irregularly in various taverns. Your captain attends these, debating issues affecting the pirate republic. Should they accept the king's pardon being offered? Hell no. Should they establish more formal laws? Maybe. Should they pool resources for common defense? Depends on the threat. It's democracy in its rawest form. Armed men arguing about their collective future, with no authority beyond what they grant each other. The temporary nature of Nassau haunts every celebration. Everyone knows this can't last. The British Empire won't tolerate a pirate republic forever. Spain demands action against the thieves strangling their treasure routes. Eventually, warships will come in force, offering pardons to some and nooses to others. But for now, in this moment, Nassau is paradise for men like you, free of masters, free of laws, free to drink and whore and spend your stolen gold however you please. As you stumble back to the ship after 3 days of debauchery, pockets empty and head pounding, you reflect on the madness of pirate economics. You risk your life for gold, then spend it immediately on temporary pleasures. The merchants get rich, the whores get rich. Everyone gets rich except the pirates who do the actual stealing. It's a system that makes no sense. Yet what's the alternative? Save your money and die with full pockets. You'd rather live wild and die poor than the reverse. Nassau fades behind you as the Siren's Revenge makes sail. Her crew poorer but happier for the visit. Already, men talk about the next prize, the next payday, the next glorious return to this thieves' paradise. The cycle continues. Steal, spend, steal again, until death or the king's justice breaks the wheel. But that's tomorrow's worry. Today, you're sailing free waters toward the next horizon, and Nassau will be waiting when you return. If you return, the uncertainty is half the thrill. The phosphorescence trails behind your ship like ghostly fire as you stand the midnight watch. And old Tom starts another of his stories. "Did I ever tell ye about the Flying Dutchman?" he asks, though he's told it a dozen times. Nobody complains. Ghost stories help pass the long, dark hours when every creak sounds like dead men walking. In this life where death stalks constantly, superstition becomes religion, and even hardened killers touch wood and cross themselves when ill omens appear. You wear 3 charms around your neck: a piece of carved whalebone from your first prize, a Spanish doubloon with a hole drilled through it, and a small bag of grave dirt from Nassau Cemetery. The last one came from Mama Toulouse, a voodoo priestess who sells protection to pirates desperate enough to believe. She promised it would keep you safe from drowning, though she made no guarantees about hanging. Half your crew wears similar talismans, crosses, crescents, African fetishes, Chinese coins, anything that might tip fate's scales in their favor. Death rituals at sea follow ancient patterns modified by practical necessity. When Williams died of fever last week, you sewed him into his hammock with the last stitch through his nose. Tradition says this ensures he's truly dead, though it's probably just to make the shroud stay closed. 2 cannonballs at his feet guaranteed he'd sink proper. The boatswain read what he could remember of the burial service while everyone stood bareheaded, even the godless ones. Then splash, and Williams joined the thousands of sailors feeding Caribbean fish. Here's what landlubbers don't understand. The sea is haunted. Every sailor knows this. Ships disappear in calm weather. Lights appear where no ship sails. Voices call from empty water. You've personally seen St. Elmo's fire dancing on the mast during storms. Blue flame that science says is electrical, but looks exactly like souls trying to climb to heaven. During the middle watch, when exhaustion blurs the line between waking and sleeping, you sometimes hear your name called by men who died months ago. The albatross that's followed your ship for 3 days makes everyone nervous. These birds supposedly carry sailors' souls, and killing one brings catastrophic bad luck. But this one seems unnatural. It never feeds, never lands, just circles endlessly. Some men want to shoot it. Others say that would doom the ship. The debate grows heated until the quartermaster settles it by banning anyone from harming the bird. It disappears the next dawn, leaving everyone unsettled and checking their charms. Historians still argue whether pirates were more superstitious than regular sailors. The answer is yes, because pirates face death more often and more violently. When you're already breaking society's rules, why not hedge your bets with the supernatural? Your crew includes practitioners of a dozen faiths, and most men sample from several. Rodriguez prays his Catholic rosary, then pours rum overboard for Yamoja. The gunner performs Islamic prayers at dawn, but keeps a rabbit's foot in his pocket. Spiritual insurance comes in many forms. The death omens are specific and numerous. A shark following the ship means someone will die within 3 days, usually true, given your mortality rates. Dreaming of muddy water foretells death by drowning. A man whose shadow looks shorter than normal won't see another sunset. Birds landing on deck bring messages from the other side. These beliefs create self-fulfilling prophecies. Men convinced their doom take ridiculous risks or simply give up, proving the omens right. Your recurring nightmare is always the same: standing on the gallows with a rope around your neck, looking out at a crowd of well-dressed people come to watch you dance on air. You try to speak, but your throat is already crushed. You wake gasping, hands clutching your neck, the phantom rope feeling all too real. Half the crew has similar dreams. Pirates die by hanging so often that it haunts your sleeping hours. Better to drown than swing, men say, and mean it. The ghosts of murdered men supposedly haunt their killers, which explains why some pirates go mad. Jenkins, who tortured that Spanish captain for gold locations, now talks to empty air and flinches from invisible blows. He claims the captain's spectre follows him, whispering curses in Spanish. Whether it's guilt or genuine haunting, the effect is the same. Jenkins is useless in battle now, cowering from enemies only he can see. The crew tolerates him out of superstitious fear. If ghosts can drive men mad, best not to create more angry spirits. Lucky coins pass through the crew like holy relics. Your ship's prized possession is a bent piece of 8 that deflected a musket ball meant for the previous captain's heart. Men pay to carry it during battles, believing it provides protection. The coin has supposedly saved 17 lives, though skeptics point out the previous captain still died, poisoned by bad meat, which the coin couldn't prevent. Faith requires selective memory. The full moon brings its own madness. Lunar-struck sailors act strange, picking fights over nothing, seeing phantoms in the rigging, or jumping overboard to swim with mermaids only they can see. Caesar doses them with laudanum and ties them to their hammocks until the fit passes. Scientists claim the moon affects tides, not minds. But try telling that to someone who's watched a shipmate claw his own eyes out while screaming about the moon's accusations. Weather signs blend superstition with practical observation. Red sky at morning really does mean storms approaching, but whistling aboard ship summons the wind, dangerous when you're already fighting a gale. Women aboard bring bad luck. Everyone knows, though Mary Read's continued survival argues otherwise. Maybe she's the exception that proves the rule, or maybe the rule is bollocks. Nobody wants to test it by bringing more women aboard. The mermaids deserve special mention. Every man claims to have seen one, usually after too much rum, but some sightings are disturbingly credible. Rodriguez swears he saw a woman with a fishtail sitting on Devil's Rock, combing her hair with a golden comb. He was sober, on watch, and 2 other men saw the same thing. Probably a manatee. The educated scoff. But manatees don't have long hair or golden combs. The Caribbean holds mysteries that European science can't explain. Death preparations occupy considerable mental space. Your will, such as it is recorded in the quartermaster's book. Your share goes to your fictional brother in Bristol, actually your sister. But women can't inherit pirate gold officially. Many men have similar arrangements, fictional relatives who are real lovers, friends, or bastard children. Some leave their shares to the crew, ensuring a proper pirate funeral with rivers of rum. Others donate to churches, hoping to buy their way out of hell with stolen gold. The ship's cat, Lucifer, serves as our weather prophet and supernatural detector. When he refuses to enter certain parts of the ship, wise men avoid those areas. His midnight yowling warns of approaching storms with eerie accuracy. Some claim he sees ghosts, based on how he'll suddenly arch his back and hiss at empty corners. The crew feeds him choice scraps and nobody dares harm him. Killing a ship's cat brings the worst luck imaginable. He's outlived 3 captains and shows no signs of slowing down. Your strangest experience happened during a dead calm off Cuba. The water turned glass smooth, reflecting stars so perfectly you couldn't tell up from down. Then something massive passed under the ship. Not a whale, those you recognize. This was longer, with a serpentine motion that raised waves in the stillness. Everyone saw it, but nobody speaks of it directly, referring only to that night off Cuba with meaningful looks. Some things are too strange for even pirates to process. As dawn approaches, ending your watch, you perform the morning ritual, spit over the left shoulder for luck, touch wood to avert evil, and check that your charms remain in place. Today might bring prizes or death, calm seas or hurricanes, merchant gold or navy nooses. The only certainty is uncertainty, and in that chaos, superstition provides the illusion of control. You're a rational man who happens to believe in ghosts, omens, and protective charms. The contradiction doesn't bother you. In a life this dangerous, you need all the help you can get, natural or otherwise. The rising sun burns away the night's phantoms but never quite erases them. They'll return with darkness, as surely as the tide, reminding you that death sails alongside every pirate ship, patient as the sea itself. The morning brings proof that omens sometimes speak true. That albatross should have warned us. A British man of war appears on the horizon. 74 guns of floating death that outclasses your brigantine like a wolf, outclasses a rabbit. Captain Hornigold orders full sail. But everyone knows the truth. If the wind doesn't shift, you'll be in cannon range by noon. Men check their weapons and their souls, preparing for what might be the final dance. You've dodged the Navy before, usually through speed and cunning rather than firepower. Pirates can't match military discipline or armament, so you rely on superior knowledge of local waters and the desperation of hunted men. But this captain knows his business, cutting off escape routes with tactical precision. The quartermaster distributes the ship's papers, forgeries claiming you're a legitimate merchant vessel. Nobody believes they'll fool anyone, but hope dies hard. The transformation from democracy to despotism happens instantly when battle looms. Hornigold's word becomes law. His orders followed without question or vote. You take your position at the number 3 gun, hand steady despite the churning in your gut. The gunner's mate reminds everyone of the plan. Chain shot for the rigging first, then round shot if we must. But remember, lads, We can't trade broadsides with a ship of the line. One good volley, and we're driftwood. Here's what the romantic stories skip: the terror of naval combat. Your 6-pound cannons might as well be pea shooters against the warship's 24-pounders. One hit from those monsters will turn men into red mist and splinters. You've seen it happen, a single ball passing through 3 men, leaving nothing recognizable. The waiting is worst. Watching death approach at walking speed while your mouth goes dry and your bladder threatens betrayal. The British captain is clever, staying upwind to control engagement terms. Signal flags demand surrender. Hornigold responds by raising the black flag. No quarter asked or given. It's bravado more than threat. Everyone knows pirates hang whether they surrender or fight. Might as well go down swinging. The crew cheers raggedly. Fear disguised as defiance. You touch your charms one more time, wondering if grave dirt works against cannonballs. Then, miracle or coincidence, the wind shifts. A squall line appears from nowhere. Those sudden Caribbean storms that make navigation nightmarish, but occasionally save lives. Hornigold doesn't hesitate, steering straight for the wall of rain and wind. The warship fires a ranging shot that falls short by 50 yards. The next will find its mark, but the storm reaches you first. Instantly, visibility drops to nothing. Rain hammers down like musket balls, and the ship heels over so far you're standing on the gun carriage. The next 2 hours test seamanship more than courage. You fight to keep canvas aloft in winds that want to tear the masts out. Men go overboard and vanish instantly in the chaos. No possibility of rescue in these seas. The British ship vanishes in the storm, but that means nothing. She could be 50 yards away or 5 miles. Every shadow might be a sea to maybe her bulk bearing down to crush you. Lightning turns the world white and black in snapshot moments. When the storm finally passes, you're alone on an empty sea. The British ship is nowhere visible, though that could change quickly. 3 men are missing, swept overboard or crushed by shifting cargo. Another has a broken arm from a falling block. But you're alive, free, and running south towards Spanish waters where the British might not follow. The crew's mood is giddy relief mixed with exhaustion. Death passed close enough to smell her breath, and she smelled like gunpowder and salt. Survival requires hiding now. Hornigold knows every hidden anchorage in these waters, and he uses them all. You spend 3 days in a mangrove swamp, the ship camouflaged with cut branches while mosquitoes drain you dry. Lookouts watch for British sails while the rest of you make repairs and try not to think about how close you came. Some men talk of accepting the king's pardon, recently offered to pirates who surrender. Others spit at the suggestion. The arguments grow heated until Hornigold calls for order. The real death blow to piracy isn't military, it's political. Word spreads through the Caribbean like fever. King George offers full pardons to any pirate who surrenders before September 1718. No questions asked. All past crimes forgiven. It's brilliant tactics, dividing crews between those tired of running and those who can't imagine another life. Your own ship splits into factions, trust eroding like sandcastles at high tide. You make port at a small Cuban fishing village where the headman takes bribes and asks no questions. The mood is subdued as men contemplate their futures. Some will take the pardon. You can see it in their eyes. The exhaustion that comes from years of looking over their shoulders. Others will sail until the noose stops them, unable or unwilling to return to ordinary life. You're torn between options, each seeming equally doomed. Mary Read speaks for many when she says, What's pardon worth when you've got no trade but stealing? They'll turn us loose with nothing, then hang us when we steal again from hunger. She's right. Pirates make terrible farmers or craftsmen. The skills you've learned, violence, intimidation, reading wind and water, don't translate to legitimate employment. The pardon offers forgiveness, not future. Disease claims more victims as you hide. The swamp breeds fever, and soon half the crew shakes with ague. Caesar does what he can, but medicine runs low. 2 more men die, buried in shallow graves that crabs will excavate within days. Their shares get distributed among survivors, a morbid lottery that nobody celebrates. Death by illness seems particularly cruel after surviving combat. At least cannonballs are quick. The news that finally breaks your spirit comes from a fishing boat. Blackbeard is dead. Edward Teach, the terror of the Atlantic, killed by Lieutenant Maynard in a bloody battle off North Carolina. His head decorates Maynard's bowsprit as a warning. If Blackbeard can fall, what chance do smaller fish have? The golden age is ending, crushed between pardons and patrols. The Caribbean is becoming civilized. No room left for the brotherhood of the coast. Your dreams grow darker. Now the gallows crowd includes faces you recognize. Dead shipmates come to watch you join them. Sometimes you dream of normal life, working honest jobs, dying in bed as old men. But morning always returns you to reality, a hunted criminal on a rotting ship, waiting for the inevitable. The grave dirt charm feels heavier each day, reminder that all pirates end in graves, one way or another. Captain Hornigold calls a final vote. Take the pardon or keep sailing. The democracy that defined your floating republic will decide its end. Men argue passionately, voices raised, old friendships shattered by diverging futures. When the vote is counted, it's close. 90 for the pardon, 87 against. The ship will sail to Nassau, where those who wish can surrender. The rest will elect a new captain and continue the account. You stand at the rail as Nassau appears, looking exactly as it did months ago, but feeling entirely different. British warships fill the harbour. The black flags are gone, replaced by Union Jacks. Governor Rogers has arrived with pardons and power, turning the pirate republic into another colonial port. The transformation is stunning. Order imposed on chaos, law replacing democracy, civilization crushing freedom. Your decision crystallizes as the anchor drops. You'll take the pardon, not from cowardice or love of king, but from exhaustion. The constant fear, the violence, the friends fed to fish. It's ground you down like millstones. Maybe you'll starve in legitimate poverty, but at least you'll sleep without dreaming of nooses. The grave dirt charm goes over the side, no longer needed. You're done tempting fate. As you row toward shore and surrender, you look back at the siren's revenge one last time. She's just wood and canvas, but she's been your entire world. The remaining crew waves farewell, some sadly, others with contempt for pardoned cowards. Mary Read stays aboard, too proud or too honest to pretend reformation. You'll hear later that she died in prison, pregnant and defiant to the end. Better than dancing on air, perhaps, but dead just the same. The fort looms before you, Union Jack snapping in the Caribbean breeze. You're about to trade freedom for forgiveness, piracy for poverty, democracy for subjugation. But you'll live, probably, which is more than most pirates manage. The golden age is over. The age of survival begins. You step onto the dock as citizen rather than criminal, though the the distinction feels thin as paper. Behind you, the siren's revenge prepares for her final voyage. Ahead lies whatever life-pardoned pirates can scrape together in a world that's moved beyond them. You don't look back again. Some transformations require clean breaks, and you're breaking from piracy like a badly set bone, painful but necessary. The Caribbean sun still burns, the sea still calls, but you're done answering. Let younger men feed the fish. You've donated enough blood to the ocean's endless appetite. Time to see if land life suits you better than sea death. The odds aren't good, but they're better than a broadside from a ship of the line. In piracy, that passes for victory, and so your pirate days drift into memory, like fog burning off in the morning sun. The pardoned life isn't easy. You work as a dock laborer in Charleston, loading the same merchant ships you once plundered, your hands still stained with tar that will never fully fade. No honest work now. Sometimes, late at night when the moon is full and the tide is high, you hear the sea whispering old promises of freedom and gold. But those whispers grow fainter each passing year. You marry a widow who doesn't ask too many questions about your past. Your children grow up believing their father was a merchant sailor who survived a shipwreck, close enough to truth to satisfy curious neighbors. The nightmares fade, though you still wake sometimes thinking you're in a hammock, the ship rolling beneath you on those nights. You step outside and look at the stars, remembering how to navigate by their light, a skill you'll never need again, but can't forget. The sea claims your old shipmates one by one. Hornigold drowns in a hurricane. Calico Jack hangs at Port Royal. Mary Read dies of fever in prison. Each death closes another chapter of a story the world is eager to forget. Pirates become legends, then myths, their reality sanitized into adventure tales for children. Nobody wants to hear about the scurvy, the terror, the democratic brotherhood of desperate men. Your breathing slows now as sleep approaches, deep and peaceful as you never knew aboard ship. Tomorrow will bring more honest labor, more quiet life, more distance from what you were. The Spanish gold is long spent, but the memories remain, not treasures anymore, just echoes of a younger man's choices. You close your eyes and let the past recede like the tide, carrying away the last traces of the pirate you were. Sleep takes you gently. No dreams of gallows tonight, just rest, earned through survival, the greatest treasure of all.